Now, Hong Kong has recorded its first death from the coronavirus outbreak, the second fatality outside mainland China, and it comes as China's leadership admits shortcomings and deficiencies in its response to the outbreak. While the death toll in China itself has now risen to 425, and the number of cases has climbed to more than 20,000. Our Asia-Pacific editor Celia Hatton has more.
The new coronavirus has claimed another life, this time in the Chinese territory of Hong Kong. Hundreds of medical workers there began a second day of strikes. They want to force the government to completely close the city's borders with mainland China. Those calls amplified after a 39-year-old man died from the virus on Tuesday. Hong Kong has 15 confirmed cases so far. On the neighboring island of Taiwan, a rare case of cooperation with the authorities in Beijing. Some stranded from Taiwan were evacuated from mainland China. Guohowever, the Taiwanese authorities had strong words for China.
We've seen the Chinese government rudely and unreasonably pressuring Taiwan on the international stage. They're putting political considerations over people's health and safety. This basically is extremely vile.
This latest death in Hong Kong is the second outside of mainland China. A man died in the Philippines last week after visiting Wuhan, the central Chinese city at the epicenter of the outbreak. Huashen Hospital, built from scratch in just 2 weeks, received its first patients on Tuesday, though some say building work still continues. Another temporary hospital is planned to open in the coming days. Experts say much is still unknown about the pathogen. The World Health Organization confirmed that clinical trials are underway to test if antiretroviral drugs, the type used to treat HIV, could be effective in tackling the virus. However, that's unconfirmed. Yesterday, Chinese experts also warned caution over details about how the virus is transmitted.
Although viral nucleic acids were found in feces of infected patients, the virus has not been acquired yet. So we will keep observing to get further details.
As hospitals open, production lines, factories and shops are closing. Hyundai announced it is to suspend its South Korea production as the virus hits their supply chain in China. Macau announced it will temporarily close down all casinos, cutting off the lifeblood of the city's economy. The flu-like virus has now spread to approximately 24 nations, sparking fears for global economic growth and rattling markets. Shanghai's stock index lost some $400 billion in market value on Monday. And as the markets plunge, the death toll continues to rise. Celia Hatton, BBC News.
Well, as the death toll from the coronavirus in China rises steadily, campaigners are urging the country to apply a permanent ban on the wildlife trade. Markets selling live animals are considered a potential source of diseases that are new to humans, and there has been speculation that it was such a market in Wuhan that could have been the starting point for this outbreak. With me now is our World Service Environment correspondent Naveen Singh Khadka. Thanks very much for coming in. First of all, is it clear exactly how this spread happened?
This is still being worked out. So they talk about what happened with SARS back then. So they've identified that it was from bats. From bats, it jumped into some other animals and then onto humans. Now this time around, they guess, and they're saying it has to be bats, but they're still working on it. But the thing is, what scientists are saying is the exposure to these wild animals and the way they sell other animals, chicken, pigs, whatever, exposed, side by side. So you've got snakes, you've got chicken, you've got, civet cats, and you've got pigs. So when they're in close contact like that, so that's how, or from bats, for instance. So that's how the primary source is bats, for instance, jumped into some other animal and onto human. But that's still being worked out what exactly happened, what was this intermediary animal. But by and large, they think that it has to be wild animals, and therefore this crackdown, and there's a permanent temporary ban. And international organizations, conservation organizations are asking that this be turned into a permanent one that will help wildlife conservation as well.
Aren't some of these wild markets supposed to be illegal anyway?
Yes, so it's a mix. So what happens in Chinese markets is, although it's called wildlife market, so some of those species are allowed, which internationally they have concerns. They have been demanding. But then many of the species are also illegal. And that's what the Chinese government has been trying to crack down on. But the thing is, it's easy to say. Back then, during the SARS outbreak as well, we saw this. They introduced a temporary ban. But then within, a few months after, it was gone and the business was back. But this time around, things are serious because this industry has hijacked this powerhouse that supplies all the goods to the world. That has been hijacked, and as a result, you're hearing all this big decisions from the Politburo Standing Committee chaired by the president himself.
And these animals in these markets, is this for being slaughtered fresh for consumption as well as for medicinal products? Does that all happen in the same place, or are they all in separate markets?
Well, it depends. Some of these animals, for example, pangolin scales. You see, like pangolin scales, they use for traditional Chinese medicine. And China has almost lost all of its pangolin, and therefore it's being poached elsewhere. Remember, pangolin is the most poached animal now for that market. So some of the species, for example, rhino horns, they have medicinal values, whereas other animals are used for meat, and some are for both. It's a massive industry. And you talked about this meat thing. The issue here is about warm meat. They want warm meat. The practice is they want warm. The demand for warm meat is quite high, slaughtered and kept there. And as I said, you've got snakes there, civet cats there, bats there, warm meat. It's so vulnerable, so vulnerable.
Very, very briefly, how likely is it that this is going to be able to be stopped?
Well, it's quite challenging, but then, as I said, the whole powerhouse, China as an economy, is being disturbed, and therefore this Politburo meeting has taken a decision. And so, like one-child policy, I'm told that the government will try to implement it as much as possible.
Naveen Singh, thank you very much indeed.